So I can do this too? Mm-hmm.
Everybody hear me? All right. So, Edmund Wright, Chuck, is a national columnist for Breitbart and American Thinker, a contributor to Newsmax TV and Talk Radio Network, and author of the Amazon bestseller, What the Fuck? How Carl wrote and the Establishment Lost Again. WTF.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, okay, yeah,
we
yeah.
knew we were going to do that. Wright has had numerous businesses over the past couple of decades. Was communications director for the 92 Bush whale campaign. Everybody remember how to spell tomato? Was it potato or tomato?
Yeah.
Everybody remember who's no Jack Kennedy? No. We're gonna
Thank you for reliving that trauma. Man.
Where you found out participating in the working with work with the liberal elites of South Carolina. Liberal elites, not libertarian elites.
No, these are scary people.
Scary. The liberal mindset.
Yeah.
A very exceptionally talented writer, doing it, and very funny by Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
When not writing or speaking, Wright with his wife Jennings in Beaufort, North Carolina, spending a lot of time in Raleigh and some in D.C. So, welcome, Wright.
Thank you. Appreciate being here tonight. I got up this morning and I was going across the internet, and I came across an article by John Stossel, who I assume is a pretty popular guy in this room. I think Stossel is he's the new Milton Friedman. He's the guy now that makes these complex issues about liberty and economics really easy and accessible for everybody. And what Stossel was talking about this morning was the 100-year anniversary of the communist revolution in the Soviet Union. Now, you may say, okay, I thought we were here to talk about regulation and small business. What does that have to do with the communist revolution in the Soviet Union? Well, to quote John Stossel, to paraphrase John Stossel, in his article today, he talks about the fact that the Soviet Union was a communist interventionist state. It was a police state, but it was also a bureaucratic state. And it was the bureaucracy that clogged up, put the sludge into the economy that actually sunk the Soviet Union. They could no longer afford the police state. They could no longer afford Afghanistan and other forays with their interventionist policies. It was the bureaucracy that clogged that up and that sunk the Soviet Union. And I bring that up because if you're talking about regulation, you're talking about bureaucrats. You're talking about bureaucracy. That's what we're talking about here. Now, I think the topic is specifically how to navigate regulation with the local business, state regulation, city regulation, county regulation. I'll go over some things that I've done in my business that may or may not apply to whatever you will be faced with. But what I really want to talk about, the pernicious nature of bureaucracy and bureaucrats, and how so many people that are actually good, independent people who have made statements into their lives the way they live it, that they don't need government intervention. It's amazing how many of them have actually accepted bureaucracy and become some part of the bureaucratic mindset themselves. And I'll give you two examples. First was a group of homeschoolers. The parents used to get together. We'd organize on Saturday morning. We'd organize basketball with dads, sons, and some of the daughters who played competitive basketball. And we would get together. We'd go to a gym. We'd get there about 8 o'clock, so the locals don't buzz in until about noon. So we have the gym to ourselves pretty much, 30 or 40 of us. Occasionally 3 or 4 locals would straggle in, and we'd just work them into our deal. So we had it set up so everyone got to play a lot, everyone got to rest some, and we tried to keep the competitive balance, where we needed to be. In other words, Homeschool parents are people who have said to the state of North Carolina and to Wake County, we got this. We don't need your government involved with our kids. This is a group of people who are self-organizing by their nature. So we would do this every Saturday at a local gym. So we're in Wake Forest, maybe the third or fourth Saturday we do that. 30 or 35 of us, 3 or 4 people from the town straggled in. We worked them right into our deal. Everyone's happy. Everyone's getting to play. Everyone's getting to rest a little bit. But out walks, after about an hour and a half, out walks the brand new bureaucrat in charge of running the gym in Wake Forest. And she walks out and she notices that we have not filled up the sign-up sheets the way you're supposed to do it for the free play in that gym. We've not been following the rules on the wall of how you're supposed to do that on the gym. Now, I understand why there's rules for free play gyms. If you don't, you get chaos most of the time. But we didn't have any chaos. We had it self-organized. But she made us stop what we were doing, start the fill-out sheet regulation. So we wasted 30 minutes, and we had a system that wasn't working as well when it was done as it was when we were self-organizing. Now, the reason I say this is the reason I bring this up, this story is 2 reasons. Number one, bureaucrats don't care about the results. They only care about the process. This is what you have to understand. In fact, some of them who are jealous of the fact that you have the stones to open your own business and they don't, will actually hope the results are bad. But basically, they don't care about the results. They're just there to follow the rules. But that's not the real story here. The real point I want to make tonight on this story is that I was the only dad who wanted to push back against this bureaucrat. We had 8 or 9 other homeschool dads, including one who's now my middle daughter's father-in-law. And they were just sheep. They just, again, I repeat, these are people who are living their life telling Wake County and North Carolina, I don't need you involved with my kids whatsoever. And yet they were willing to be little sheep and accept this ridiculous bit of bureaucracy on Saturday morning to use the gym. Now, I have actually a worse example than that. There's an event on the coast of North Carolina every June out of Morehead City called the Big Rock Blue Marlin Tournament. Anyone ever heard of that? Yeah. The fact that not everyone has heard of that speaks to how poorly this thing is promoted, but that's another speech. Blue marlin fishing in this tournament involves a $19,000 entry fee. It involves boats that cost between $500,000 and maybe $7 or $8 million. You'll spend 8 or 10 grand a week on fuel, more than that on your other ancillary costs. My point is, the people who can afford to be in this tournament, these are the guys like Reardon of Reardon Steel and Atlas Shrugged. I mean, these are people who are successful, they're smart, they're independent, and they don't mind doing everything they can to keep their, after-tax dollars. They don't mind killing dinosaurs because it takes a lot of fuel to run those boats 50, 60 miles offshore. They don't even mind killing fish because that's what this was about. It was a fishing tournament. So these are very independently minded people. You wouldn't call it a conservative or libertarian group by definition, but let's just say it was kind of a cross between NASCAR and Wild Kingdom and a little Tea Party thrown in. I mean, basically a conservative group, brown liquor, brown food, and, young ladies with, what I'm saying. Well, the interesting thing is, one thing the tournament organizers have always made a prominent feature of this tournament is that everybody must have a North Carolina fishing license to participate. Now, okay, that's fine. If you want to have that rule, I get that. The problem is, North Carolina only has 3 miles worth of authority off the coast. These fish are caught 40, 50, 60, 70 miles offshore. Fishing license is $15, no big deal. But I'm going to tell you about $1 million fishing license. In 2010, on the first day of the tournament, a boat from Virginia caught and brought in and successfully weighed an 883-pound blue marlin. Now, this was the biggest fish that ever been caught in the history of the tournament. This year's their 60th tournament. It's the oldest blue marlin tournament in the world, by the way. Always held on Father's Day weekend. For a golfer, a few years ago, the Big Rock Blue Marlin tournament paid out more than the U.S. Open golf tournament on the same day. So that's why the U.S. Open golf tournament upped their prize. Literally, it's why they upped their prize money. I mean, this is a big deal. It is swirling near the end of the week. Marlin. Well, they shot the marlin or they beat it with a club so they could land it easier. What some sort of competitive advantage. And we all need rules in contests for, to keep people from having unfair competitive advantages. But no, the problem was one person on the boat have a North Carolina fishing license. It was the mate. It was not the captain. It was not the owner of the boat. It was not the fisherman. It was just a guy on the boat, didn't have his North Carolina fishing license. Now, the reason he didn't have it is the year before his boat had a complete commercial license that covered everybody, and he thought that was the same thing, but he didn't have it. Get in from where you discovered the problem, went online, and got himself a North Carolina fishing license before they got into shore. But see, the Big Rock Committee, for whatever reason, in their wisdom, they wanted to play the rules of the rules, but they wanted to do the letter of the law when it fit their case, and they wanted to do the spirit of the rule when it fit their case. And by the way, there's a lesson for that whenever you're dealing with bureaucracy, especially the IRS or any other government regulation. When the spirit of the law benefits them, that's what they're going to play. When the letter of the law benefits them, that's what they're going to play. And that's what the Big Rock tournament did. Again, these are free enterprise people. This whole event is about everything that government and liberals hate. It's everything about freedom and success. Also about killing fish and burning fossil fuels as well. But the directors of the Big Rock tournament disqualified that fish from the tournament. Now, I'll talk to you a little bit about the prize money only because it explains the absurdity of this whole situation. The first big fish every week wins about $200,000 or $300,000, depending on how many people enter. The biggest fish all week wins another $500,000 or $600,000, depending on how many people enter. So we're talking about $1 million fishing license here. They disqualified them because of that. They have elevated a $15 piece of North Carolina bureaucracy that doesn't even have jurisdiction where these damn fish are caught. They have elevated that over the essence of their whole tournament. This is what I'm talking about when I mention that the bureaucratic mindset can seep in if you're not careful. We had homeschool parents. Okay, just be sheep and play by these stupid rules of the Wake Forest gym. And we had the Big Rock Blue Marlin tournament self-impose their own stupidity. So whenever anyone defends stupidity in the name of the rules, you need to have your radar up. Now, there is a little bit of a good news to this story. As it turns out, the case went to the Supreme Court, and they did award this boat a good chunk of their winnings, but not all of it. And the Supreme Court actually they actually used the bureaucracy a little bit in the favor of common sense, which rarely happens. They said, you're charging 19 grand and you're giving away $1 million. You don't have a contest, you have a damn contract. And in North Carolina, you don't void an entire contract because of an immaterial breach. I mean, what they did was they were basically, instead of throwing 5 yards for offsides, they were trying to disqualify the team. It'd be like the Daytona 500, disqualifying the winner because a member of the pit crew didn't have a damn Florida driver's license. I mean, it'd be that kind of inanity. But again, I want to tell you what the worst part of the story is. And I was on the internet. In fact, I wrote an amicus brief for the lawyer that represented the boat from Virginia that was the aggrieved party. So I don't know if it helped them win some of their money or not, but it was fun. all the fishermen rallied around not the freedom of offshore fishing. No, they all rallied around the rules of the rules crowd. I just don't understand that kind of mindset. But that's what I want to talk about tonight more than navigating specifics. We have to be aware of this. Every campaign should be about this. Bureaucrats, bureaucracy, the government destroyed the Soviet Union. It has destroyed Cuba. It has destroyed Venezuela. It is destroying California. Now let me talk about Cuba and California for a minute. Both pieces of real estate are stunningly beautiful. Both pieces of real estate have a combination of soil and climate that it is easier to grow crops in those two areas than almost anywhere on the planet. Both pieces of real estate have an unusually high percentage of their entity that is beachfront property. California has that long coast, Cuba's an island. In other words, Cuba, California, and Venezuela to a point, they have the oil. They have every advantage that an area could have to prosper, to be a great bastion of freedom. But instead, the bureaucratic mindset controlling governments have destroyed all of them. I mean, only a liberal could screw up Cuba. Only a bureaucrat could screw up Cuba, but they have. By the way, I just read a novel about Cuba, and one thing that was brought out in the book was that, and this is another thing that statist bureaucrats will do, they still talk about revolution in Cuba as if it just happened. Hell, it happened 60 years ago, 58 years ago. So they still talk about it as if it's still going on or just happened because they want to hide the carnage of what they've done, to their country. So those are a few stories that just, and I lived through both of those. I was kind of part of both of those. And it just stunned me that people didn't have the radar for the bureaucracy, I guess, that I was either blessed with or cursed with or whatever. I've got bad. I go into the DMV, I get hives. I mean, I literally break out. You have to give me Benadryl or something to get the hell out of the DMV. I mean, I just, God, if I ever have an IRS audit, they're going to carry me in on a gurney and out in a box because I just won't be able to handle that. So my radar is just, for whatever reason, very attuned to that. Now, as for my business, what we did, I'll give you a little story that happened to me. This was in April of 2008. We discovered that we were a couple $100,000 short in our bank account. Pretty disturbing situation. We had a pretty decent sized business, but let me tell you, a couple $100,000 is a shitload of money to me at that time. Still is. Well, we figured out that our office manager, who was full-time, and her daughter, who was part-time, had been systematically embezzling money, messing up our QuickBooks account, screwing with the accounts payable, the accounts receivable, the deposits, all of that. And we figured out that she had stolen all that money from us with help from her daughter. Well, we did actually have a great Raleigh cop who knew a Wake Forest cop who got her arrested one day before she went to Illinois, so she did go to jail, which was a good thing. But her daughter at that point was just a person of interest in the deal. Well, we did. What would you do to the daughter? She helped mom steal $150,000 from us or whatever. What would you? You'd fire her, right? We fired her. We thought that was the thing to do. Wake County District Attorney said that was the thing to do. The wonderful Employment Security Commission of the state of North Carolina did not think that we should be able to fire someone who helped her mom steal well over $100,000 from us. So in North Carolina, you can fire someone without cause, but then they will probably get unemployment benefits, and that'll ding your rate going forward a little bit. Well, we obviously denied the claim. We said, no, she and her mom stole a bunch of money from us. We're not, we reject paying unemployment. So we had one of those hearings. It was on the phone, had one of those hearings with an Employment Security Commission referee. Well, this is not a referee that the businessman's ever going to get a fair shake from. This is all about protecting the aggrieved party. So obviously they ruled in her favor. And they ruled in her favor, which means she would get unemployment benefits, which meant our rate on unemployment going forward would be dinged and we'd have to pay a little bit more money. Now, it wasn't the money at this point. I mean, the money was the 150 she stole plus the 100 it cost us in forensic accounting and everything. But it was the principle. And and I remember when I was on the phone, I remember when that referee told me they had ruled in favor of the perpetrator's daughter, who was a co-perpetrator, obviously. I mean, I slammed the phone down in a manner that phone was never used again. But I turned to my wife and said, we are out of the employment business. And the reason we're out of the employment business is not because of the employees. It's because every employee that you bring into your company invites government bureaucrats in from the county, from the state, from the feds, whatever. When you go from 49 to 50 employees, you bring in a whole nother group of bureaucrats. And you go from 90 to 100, then you bring it, all this bureaucracy is stratified. So that, depending on how big you are, you have to put up with more rules. So we had a little over 100 employees at the time. So this is how we navigated this mess. I mean, getting out of the embezzlement situation was a whole different thing, cost us a bunch of money. But what we decided to do is, as after seeing that we just can't live with the government this involved in our business, is we broke our company up into 4 parts. And we basically gave 3 areas to our 3 supervisors in those areas, sold them the equipment of ours they were already using. They hired the employees of ours that they were already using. And so we went from a little over 100 employees to 0 employees. It took us about 6 months to put this into play. You can't just take 100 employees and say, hey, you're all 1099ing and call it a day. You can't get away with that. So we had to jump through some hoops to do that. But the way we navigated that was simply to get out of the employment business while still maintaining the essence of what the company did. Now, when Obamacare, really kicked in, you heard of a lot of companies trying to do, they were getting 40-hour employees, they were dropping them down to 30, 35, because again, once they hit 40, then the government has more to say about how you treat and pay and benefit this employee than they do at 30 or 20 or what have you. Call me crazy, but I think if an employee and an employer willfully agree on a compensation package, I don't think any damn government has anything to say about it or should have anything to say about it. I don't care if he agrees to work 90 hours a week for $10. If he agrees to it, government shouldn't have anything to say. But of course, we're never going to get rid of the minimum wage and all these other things. So you have to be smart about how you do it. Now, that was in 2008 into 2009. Of course, this was the first few years of the Obama administration, and government intervention into businesses through Obamacare and environmental regulations and everything else was just exploding. The only ones hiring were government. Governments at every level were hiring. Businesses at every level were laying off or down, making full-time people, part-time people, whatever. So when Obama won re-election in 2012, we just said, okay, we got to do something even more drastic than this. So we ended up in 2015 buying a boutique hotel in Nicaragua and moving the hell out of the country. That's what we were doing to get out of the grasp of the bureaucrats and everything else. And I'll tell you what's sad is in supposedly socialist Nicaragua, we were left alone by the government a lot more than we were ever left alone in supposedly free market United States. This bureaucratic mindset, this government mindset, and they are the same mindset. That is what's creeping on this, and this is why our government becomes seemingly, give or take how the economy's doing, a bigger part of the GDP. It takes more hours of compliance. And by the way, while I'm thinking about that, I have zero respect for the compliance industry. You know who the compliance industry is? It's like administrative. They do these radio ads. Oh, let us handle all your Obamacare and all this stuff. To hell with them. Those are not real entrepreneurs. They're in the compliance business. So be wary of bureaucrats and the compliance business. But anyway, so we went to Nicaragua. We actually left alone more than we were in this country. And in fact, I'll use an example. There was a bar, right? We had a little bar restaurant at our hotel. And I will tell you that 95% of the rules and regulations that the local health departments impose on bars and restaurants in this country are not needed. The reason I know they were not needed is if all that was needed, we'd have had people dying every day in our bar and restaurant. We wouldn't have gotten a 7 on a scale of 100 had we been inspected by the North Carolina Health Department. So that's just an example of where local regulation at that point, or state regulation at that point, is really stifling and it's not needed. And again, as we allow this to creep, as we get closer and closer to what Venezuela has, what Cuba has, what the Soviet Union had before they were destroyed. This is why elections are very important. And I don't know why Venezuela, Cuba, California, all these examples are not part of every election process. It should be the big factor to me in any election, any level, at any time, is how much government intervention are you talking about? And unfortunately, we get, off on all kind of other tangents. And, then we supposedly, on one side of the aisle nominate a businessman, but he actually turns out to be a damn entertainer who's perfectly comfortable with a whole lot of government, or we're left with someone who's a lifelong believer in government. And then, God bless our Libertarian Party, they give us a dadgum big government liberal from Massachusetts on the ticket. So, even with the group of people, homeschool parents, Blue Island fishermen, the Libertarian Party, the people you would think would be the most freedom-oriented allow this mindset to creep in. So I can't give you a whole lot of information on how to navigate regulation in your specific situation. Every industry is different, every business is different. But what I can do is I can talk about the big picture and talk about examples of how we need to be made aware. And, I'm sure people in this room are more aware than the average person. But again, I've just seen it too many times where we invite this pernicious, insidious, frog is boiling slowly, poison into our lives, and it will kill us the way it has killed other countries, if we're not able to somehow turn this around. So that's the main message I want to leave with you tonight. A couple things about the Soviet Union. 50 years into the Soviet communist experiment, 1967, a couple of guys are walking down the street in Moscow. And one of them turns to the other and says, 50 years, do we have full communism now? And his friend turns back to him and says, oh, hell no, it's going to get a lot worse from now on out. That's supposed to be fun. I'll try again. The head of the Soviet Union was called the General Secretary. And that's just the head guy in charge of the Politburo of the Soviet government. And then they had ministers of this and ministers of that. So one day the General Secretary is meeting the Minister of Agriculture. Let's talk about how the crops are coming in. And the Minister of Agriculture says, well, Mr. Secretary, things are great. We got so many potatoes. If we piled up all our potatoes in one spot, those potatoes would reach all the way up to the throne of God. General Secretary says, Minister, this is the Soviet Union. There ain't no God. Minister of Agriculture says, Mr. Secretary, this is the Soviet Union. Ain't no damn potatoes either. One more. Because remember, I set the stage with Stasso and the Soviet Union, so this is fair game on regulation, right? Soviet citizen or a Soviet subject, really, has one of those piece of crap Lada vehicles. So it's the worst car ever made for the Soviet Union. And his transmission goes out. So he goes down to the local mechanic and says, all right, need a new transmission. Mechanic checks his schedule and says, all right, we can hook you up 5 years from next Thursday. The car's like 5 years from next Thursday. What the heck? Mechanic says, that's the best I can do, 5 years from next Thursday. Well, the car owner says, all right, 5 years from next Thursday, morning or afternoon. Mechanic says, it's 5 years from next Thursday, what the hell does it matter? The car owner says, the plumber's coming in the morning. Those are really not huge exaggerations over what happens when the bureaucratic state takes hold of everything, gums up everything. Of course, the next extension is bribery. A bureaucratic state becomes a police state. It becomes a kleptocracy because you can't get anything done unless you're bribing the bureaucrats, and then that just leads to one problem after another. And in fact, one thing I used to tell people, why in the heck did you go to Nicaragua to buy a hotel? And I said, well, I figured if I'm going to have to pay bribes to get anything done, they'll be a lot cheaper in Nicaragua than it will be in the United States. So I always love to talk about bureaucrats and bureaucracy, love to make fun of them. It's interesting, the first book was this book right here called You Might Be a Liberal. And yes, I shamelessly stole a concept from Jeff Foxworthy, You Might Be a Redneck, only I'm making fun of liberals instead of rednecks, because they're rarely the same people. But what this book evolved into, which I didn't anticipate coming when I started writing it, it actually evolved into, I had 600 of those one-liner jokes in there, like you might be a little like, if you ever watch CNN anywhere but in an airport, you you might be a little. If you've ever paid for your tattoo at a food stamp, you might be a little. Or then one on bureaucrats, if you've ever regulated that a drive-through ATM machine be Braille functional, you might be a little. By the way, that actually happened. But anyway, this became a treatise on the liberal mind, and then that became a treatise on the bureaucratic mind. Because what dawned on me while I was writing this book is the liberal mind, and I don't mean the classical liberal, I mean the kind of the version of liberal that's been used in our politics for 40 years. The leftist mind, the progressive mind, the statist mind, that is the liberal mindset. That is what, at their essence, is they're all about. Their idea of freedom is their freedom to control us. Our idea of freedom, of course, is the freedom to control ourselves. So I'll leave you with that. I appreciate the opportunity tonight and be happy to take some questions.
So I have a couple of things. You sort of repeat the question.
Okay.
So is there something North Carolina specific that you think the Libertarian Party can sell, especially if it would pull in possibly conservatives? I mean, you understand the challenge of a small party politically. Are there one or two issues? We did craft freedom where we talked about the barrel limit on small growers and having to sign on with third party.
Well, that's good to see. This is the other, and he asked what the Libertarian Party do in North Carolina to impact this discussion, this issue. When you get into what you're talking about there, that's kind of part of the compliance industry. That's the crony capitalist essence that comes with the bureaucratic state by definition. The big protected companies want to license everything, and that's part of that deal. That level security mission extraordinarily anti-entrepreneurial. I go after our gas taxes. Gas taxes are like 14 cents higher than South Carolina. Really, what you get. Yeah. This is, how can we sell this to conservative politicians who should be? Well, see, this is the problem. We have it nationally, and we also have it in North Carolina to a bigger extent than I used to think. The Party is not conservative anymore.
be considered conservative and libertarian leanings. That's kind of where I would come down. And certain things really get my libertarian streak more fired up than others, and we've talked about those tonight. You know, this is a tough question, and I'm not trying to cop out with an answer. But every election you've ever voted for, going back to third grade student council to every presidential vote you ever cast, every election is the lesser of two evils. You ain't never gonna find anyone perfect to vote for, so it becomes a very difficult choice. Those who look at their vote as something that says something about them, and I'm not going to vote for, you know, Donald Trump or Mitt Romney or whatever, just, you know, because it just offends too many of my an esoteric self-statement about what you're about. We're given two crappy choices like Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and then the third choice is Paul Johnson, who's going to be so stoned he's going to let liberal William Weld make all the decisions. I mean, we didn't have any good choices in this country. So you have to just try and steward the election as you can. You have to keep the pressure. You have to kind of get inroads with the people that you know are good conservatives, like nationally. That would be Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and stuff, and try, and Mike Lee, and try to expand out from there. And the other thing you need to do, and by the way, it was Steve Bannon, literally, who personally recruited me to write for Breitbart. And he personally assigned me a series on the Republican establishment. So I wrote 19 installments on a series that he called Rogue Stupid, the definition of the Republican establishment. And I just took some situation where the Republican establishment was doing something stupid, or they were selling us out, or whatever, and just wrote articles on it. And I forget where I was going with that. ADD's kicking in after the two vodkas, you know, whatever. Yeah. No.
So do you think that's an easier fight?
For a local party, that is an easier fight. It's easier logistics. It's easier because it's a small universe. What's kind of sad in our country, I don't have an answer to that, is that, you know, our president now is way more important than the Constitution ever intended for our president to be. Everything's about the president, and then an extension of that is the day he's inaugurated, then everything is about the next presidential election. Congress doesn't do anything anymore. Part of it is they've abdicated their responsibility. Part of it is a lot of them like being part of the gravy train, and they don't want to mess anything up. House of Cards. You watch that. If you watch House of Cards, God help us, we hope it comes back to season 6. But if you watch that, and this speaks to a lot of what you were talking about, you find out, and probably it's probably not a whole lot different than in the state legislature of Raleigh or, you know, across the country. What actually works as policy, what actually benefits us, is never part of the equation. It's not even, they don't even consider it. So, and part of that is voter apathy, part of that is, you know, voters get excited about the presidential election, they don't pay attention anymore. And the federal government is so big, you know, we could have the best libertarian government in the state legislature than the city of Raleigh and the county of Wake. And it really wouldn't make that much difference because the damn federal government is so big and so intrusive. So we get caught into this kind of catch-22. On the one hand, our revolution was about localized government just as much as it was about limited government. It was about localized government. So a localized government that can protect us from the federal government, we kind of need a powerful local government. And then once we get a powerful local government, then hell, we got to live with a powerful local government. So we're in a bit of a catch-22. And again, I wish I had an answer to that. I'd be a wealthy, high-paid consultant. Yes, sir.
I just want to tell everybody, I actually bought your book on Kindle.
Oh,
I
which
just want
one?
to let everybody know it's $4.99 on Kindle.
Is it down to $4.99?
That's the Karl Rove and the
WTF.
Yeah.
It's actually Amazon's elections bestseller for a while.
That's right.
I was first and third at the same time, one in Kindle, one in print.
So unfortunately, I went to
I'm not
Amazon
rich, it didn't last long.
and I looked for it, and there it was.
$4.99. Damn.
The question was, as you mentioned, GOP establishment strategy. Now, would you say that Trump contributes to that strategy in a book?
Yes, he did. The reason he did is because a lot of the Trump voters projected onto him this great anti-government, anti-regulation, anti-tax, anti-leftist crusader. It's not who he is. He's never been. For God's sakes, he was still talking about single-payer health care in the Republican primary. Not that the dumbass Rush Limbaugh noticed. But no, there was the Trump election was anti-establishment, absolutely. Anti-Republican establishment, anti-all of Washington establishment. It was also pushback on the cultural issues, you know, the Black Lives Matter, Antifa, you know, and the stupid stuff like that. It was a pushback on, you know, we had this terror attack in New York yesterday, and the guy came in as a result of a ridiculous visa program that Chuck Schumer inspired. So it was kind of a pushback on that, even though he's really not that guy. He's really not that warrior. Although today, it did come out that his ultra son-in-law, Jared Kushner, the rumor is now around the White House that Jared Kushner is the one giving Trump a lot of bad advice. Still Trump's fault if you ask me. But if he's realized that his son-in-law is bad news, you know, maybe that's a step in the right direction. But yes, it was phony, but that's what it was about.
So, Chuck and I have been friends for 20 years. And I'm older than you. You're a year older. So, one of the things I'm not covering the bio. Since you said it, you agree with it. You agree with it. Chuck was a ghostwriter for about 2.5 years. And
Back when Rush was a conservative.
right. Before the Trump era.
Before the orange pump.
And interestingly enough,
May not say. On the other hand, that right.
Talk about how you came from essentially being the other half of Rush's brain to the way that you and I both feel about Rush now today and his evolution of the hardcore Trump.
Yeah, thanks for what you said. It's hard to realize it now because in the last 2 years, so much has changed in the conservative media. But prior to August, the second week of August of 2015, Rush Limbaugh was really pretty much one thing. He was pretty much a consistent, limited government conservative. He's also a social conservative, but he was consistent for that. He was consistent. Now, he had a blind spot with George W. Bush because he liked the family. He had a blind spot with Karl Rove because he knew Karl Rove. Yeah, he had some blind spots, but they were all based on personal relations. They were all based on personal relationships. Yeah. He became something else in August of 2015. He became what we call a Trump humper. What we could always count on Rush, and you'll have to admit this, what we could generally count on Rush is when Jeb Bush said something liberal, or Mitt Romney said something liberal, or Newt Gingrich said something liberal, or attacked another Republican from a liberal mindset, he would pounce on it. He would pounce on it. I remember in 2011, Newt Gingrich, I was working on Super PAC 40 New Yorkers, and I lost this debate. I did not want to buy that stupid Bain Capital film, the one that basically criticized Mitt Romney for, God bless him, being successful, right? So what the brilliant idiots in this super PAC and his campaign tried to do is go after Mitt Romney from the left. They went after this King of Fame film, which could be made by MSNBC, you know, and Rush and Hannity and Levin and Beck and everybody instantly pounced on you. What the hell are you doing sounding like the Democratic National Committee in a Republican primary? So Rush had always been, he attacked McCain harshly. He's always been on Lindsey Graham. All the really worst players, he's always pointed them out. Trump comes along, more liberal than any of them. Trump comes along, attacking Ted Cruz, attacking others with left-wing talk shows, and Rush thinks it's funny. It's fascinating that Trump's doing this and getting away with it. And I'm thinking, you got 20 million listeners. Maybe if you'd say something, he wouldn't damn be getting away with it. But Rush went totally bad in 2015, totally different than what he was. My guess is his audience is almost totally turned over. I know Steve listened for years, I listened for years, wrote for it for a few years. Everybody I know that's a long-time Rush listeners now tuned out. I think he's got a lot of these newbie Trump votes, and I don't know how much the Reds can stay on that candy. But I like to say that support for Donald Trump is going to do for Rush Limbaugh's election what Jerry Sandusky did for Joe Paterno's legacy. Which is to come in at the very end and destroy multiple decades of work. You like that? I didn't know you got that from. Yeah. We don't have to get too literal with that. It's an analogy. Anything else? Let's have a drink. Chat one-on-one if you want to. I appreciate it again. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.
You mentioned 3 years. You can have, it's an issue that will continue to 2018. Look, if you run a business, you should be able to grow it and manage it without government involved. And you touched on that. It's a great theme, and I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll motivate you to check some L's on your ballot going forward. We used to get a couple in there. It may not be at the top, but we're going to work on the General Assembly.
I will say this. Daughter during the 2016 election, her kids, so we raised 3 small government Raven conservatives. Very Dixon, just like their dad and their mom. But she lived in Rochester, New York during the 2016 election. Well, we knew what would happen in New York. Hillary was going on 21. Any Democrat will be Republican. So she asked me what should she do, and she was discussing with Trump. I was discussing with Hillary. And I said, "Well, you need to do in New York. I want to do North Carolina because it could be close. What you need to do in New York is you need to vote Johnson as well, just to say screw you to the to the 2 major parties." So my daughter did vote for the Johnson ticket in the state of New York, and he did not win New York.
You got some great advice. Thank you, sir.